Hey guys, your reader is here. So today I'm going to read chapter 1 from the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini. So let's get started. Chapter 1, Weapons of Influence. I got a phone call one day from a friend who had recently opened an Indian jewelry store in Arizona. She was giddy with a curious piece of news. Something fascinating had just happened, and she thought that, as a psychologist, I might be able to explain it to her. The story involved a certain allotment of turquoise jewelry she had been having trouble selling. It was the peak of the tourist season. The store was unusually full of customers. The turquoise pieces were of good quality for the prices she was asking, yet they had not sold. My friend had attempted a couple of standard sales tricks to get them moving. She tried calling attention to them by shifting their location to a more central display area. No luck. She even told her sales staff to push the items hard, again without success. Finally, the night before leaving on an out-of-town buying trip, she scribbled an exasperated note to her head saleswoman. Everything in this display case priced into half, hoping just to be rid of the offending pieces, even if at a loss. When she returned a few days later, she was not surprised to find that every article had been sold. She was shocked though to discover that because the employer had read the 1 by 2 in her scrawled message as a 2, the entire allotment had sold out at twice the original price. That's when she called me. I thought I knew what had happened, but told her that if I were to explain things properly, she would have to listen to a story of mine. Actually, it isn't my story. It's about mother turkeys, and it belongs to the relatively new science of ethology, the study of animals in their natural settings. Turkey mothers are good mothers, loving, watchful, and protective. They spend much of their time tending, warming, cleaning, and huddling the young beneath them. But there is something odd about their method. Virtually all of this mothering is triggered by one thing: the cheep sound of young turkey chicks. Other identifying features of the chicks, such as their smell, touch, or appearance, seem to play minor roles in the mothering process. If a chick makes the cheep noise, its mother will care for it. If not, the mother will ignore or sometimes kill it. The extreme reliance of maternal turkeys upon this one sound was dramatically illustrated by animal behaviorist M. W. Fox in his description of an experiment involving a mother turkey and a stuffed polecat. For a mother turkey, a polecat is a natural enemy whose approach is to be greeted with squawking, pecking, clawing rage. Indeed, the experimenters found that even a stuffed model of a polecat, when drawn by a string toward a mother turkey, received an immediate and furious attack. When, however, the same stuffed replica carried inside it a small recorder that played the cheep sound of baby turkeys, the mother not only accepted the oncoming polecat but gathered it underneath her. When the machine was turned off, the polecat model again drew a vicious attack. How ridiculous a female turkey seems under these circumstances. She will embrace a natural enemy just because it goes cheep, and she will mistreat or murder one of her own chicks just because it does not. She looks like an automation whose maternal instincts are under the automatic control of that single sound. The ethologists tell us that this sort of thing is far from unique to the turkey. They have begun to identify regular, blindly mechanical patterns of action in a wide variety of species, called fixed action patterns. They can involve intricate sequences of behavior, such as entire courtship or mating rituals. A fundamental characteristic of these patterns is that the behaviors that compose them occur in virtually the same fashion and in the same order every time. It is almost as if the patterns were recorded on tapes within the animals. When the situation calls for courtship, the courtship tape gets played. When the situation calls for mothering, the maternal behavior tape gets played. Click and the appropriate tape is activated, whir, and out rolls the standard sequence of behaviors. The most interesting thing about all this is the way the tapes are activated. When a male animal acts to defend his territory, for instance, it is the intrusion of another male of the same species that cues the territorial defense tape of rigid vigilance, threat, and if need be, combat behaviors. But there is a quirk in the system. It is not the rival male as a whole that is the trigger. It is some specific feature of him, the trigger feature. Often the trigger feature will be just one tiny aspect of the totality, that is the approaching intruder. Sometimes a shade of color is the trigger feature. The experiments of ethologists have shown, for instance, that a male robin acting as if a rival robin had entered its territory will vigorously attack nothing more than a clump of robin redbreast feathers placed there. At the same time, it will virtually ignore a perfect stuffed replica of a male robin without redbreast feathers. Similar results have been found in another species of bird, the blue throat, where it appears that the trigger for territorial defense is a specific shade of blue breast feathers. Before we enjoy too smugly the ease with which lower animals can be tricked by trigger features into reacting in ways wholly inappropriate to the situation, we might realize two things. First, the automatic, fixed action patterns of these animals work very well the great majority of the time. For example, because only healthy normal turkey chicks make the peculiar sound of baby turkeys, it makes sense for mother turkeys to respond maternally to that single cheep cheep noise. By reacting to just that one stimulus, the average mother turkey will nearly always behave correctly. It takes a trickster like a scientist to make her tape-like response seem silly. The second important thing to understand is that we too have our pre-programmed tapes, and although they usually work to our advantage, the trigger features that activate them can be used to dupe us into playing them at the wrong times. This parallel form of human automatic action is aptly demonstrated in an experiment by Harvard social psychologist Ellen Langer. A well-known principle of human behavior says that when we ask someone to do us a favor, we will be more successful if we provide a reason. People simply like to have reasons for what they do. Langer demonstrated this unsurprising fact by asking a small favor of people waiting in line to use a library copying machine. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush?" The effectiveness of this request plus reason was nearly total. 94% of those asked let her skip ahead of them in line. Compare this success rate to the results when she made the request only. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" Under those circumstances, only 60% of those asked complied. At first glance, it appears that the crucial difference between the two requests was the additional information provided by the words "because I am in a rush." But a third type of request tried by Langer showed that this was not the case. It seems that it was not the whole series of words but the first one, "because," that made the difference. Instead of including a real reason for compliance, Langer's third type of request used the word "because" and then, adding nothing new, merely restated the obvious. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies? The result was that once again nearly all agreed, even though no real reason, no new information was added to justify their compliance. Just as the cheep sound of turkey chicks triggered an automatic mothering response from maternal turkeys, even when it emanated from a stuffed polecat, so too did the word because triggered an automatic compliance response from Langer's subjects, even when they were given no subsequent reason to comply. Click were. Although some of Langer's additional findings show that there are many situations in which human behavior does not work in a mechanical, tape-activated way, what is astonishing is how often it does. For instance, consider the strange behavior of those jewelry store customers who swooped down on all allotment of turquoise pieces only after the items had been mistakenly offered at double their original price. I can make no sense of their behavior unless it is viewed in click-word terms. The customers, mostly well-to-do vacationers with little knowledge of turquoise, were using a standard principle, a stereotype to guide their buying. Expensive is equals to good. Thus, the vacationers who wanted good jewelry saw the turquoise pieces as decidedly more valuable and desirable when nothing about them was enhanced but the price. Price alone had become a trigger feature for quality, and a dramatic increase in price alone had led to a dramatic increase in sales among the quality-hungry buyers. Click were. It's easy to fault the tourists for their foolish purchase decisions, but a close look offers a kinder view. These were people who had been brought up on the rule you get what you pay for, and who had seen that rule borne out over and over in their lives. Before long, they had translated the rule to mean expensive is equals to good. The expensive is equals to good stereotype had worked quite well for them in the past, since normally the price of an item increases along with its worth. A higher price typically reflects higher quality. So when they found themselves in the position of wanting good turquoise jewelry without much knowledge of turquoise, they understandably relied on the old standby feature of cost to determine the jewelry's merits. Although they probably did not realize it, by reacting solely to the price feature of the turquoise, they were playing a shortcut version of betting the odds. Instead of stacking all the odds in their favor by trying painstakingly to master each of the things that indicate the worth of turquoise jewelry, they were counting on just one. The one they knew to be usually associated with the quality of any item. They were betting that price alone would tell them all they needed to know. This time, because someone mistook a half for a two, they bet wrong. But in the long run, over all the past and future situations of their lives, betting those shortcut odds may represent the most rational approach possible. In fact, automatic stereotype behavior is prevalent in much of human action, because in many cases it is the most efficient form of behaving, and in other cases it is simply necessary. You and I exist in an extraordinarily complicated stimulus environment, easily the most rapidly moving and complex that has ever existed on this planet. To deal with it, we need shortcuts. We can't be expected to recognize and analyze all the aspects in each person, event, and situations we encountered in even one day. We haven't the time, energy, or capacity for it. Instead, we must very often use our stereotypes, our rule of thumb to classify things according to a few key features, and then to respond mindlessly when one or another of these trigger features is present. Sometimes, the behavior that unrolls will not be appropriate for the situation, because not even the best stereotypes and trigger features work every time. But we accept their imperfection, since there is really no other choice. Without them, we would stand frozen, cataloging, appraising, and calibrating as the time for action sped by and away. And from all indications, we will be relying on them to an even greater extent in the future, as the stimuli saturating our lives continue to grow more intricate and variable. We will have to depend increasingly on our shortcuts to handle them all. The renowned British philosopher Alfred North Whitehead recognized this inescapable quality of modern life when he asserted that civilization advances by extending the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them. Take, for example, the advance offered to civilization by the discount coupon, which allows the consumers to assume that they will receive a reduced purchase price by presenting the coupon. The extent to which we have learned to operate mechanically on the assumption is illustrated in the experience of one automobile tire company. Mailed out coupons that, because of a printing error, offered no savings to recipients produced just as much customer response as did error-free coupons that offered substantial savings. The obvious but instructive point here is that we expect discount coupons to do double duty. Not only do we expect them to save us money, we also expect them to save us the time and mental energy required to think about how to do it. In today's world, we need the first advantage to handle pocketbook strain, but we need the second advantage to handle something potentially more important, brain strain. It is odd that despite of their current widespread use and looming future importance, most of us know very little about our automatic behavior patterns. Perhaps that is so precisely because of the mechanistic, unthinking manner in which they occur. Whatever the reason, it is vital that we clearly recognize one of their properties. They make us terribly vulnerable to anyone who does know how they work. To understand fully the nature of our vulnerability, another glance at the work of the ethologist is in order. It turns out that these animals' behaviors, with their recorded cheeps and their clumps of colored breast feathers, are not the only ones who have discovered how to activate the behavior tapes of various species. There is a group of organisms, often termed mimics, that copy the trigger features of other animals in an attempt to trick these animals into mistakenly playing the right behavior tapes at the wrong times. The mimic will then exploit this altogether inappropriate action for its own benefit. Take, for example, the deadly trick played by the killer females of one genus of firefly on the males of another firefly genus. Understandably, the fortinous males scrupulously avoid contact with the bloodthirsty, fortuitous females. But through centuries of experience, the female hunters have located a weakness in their prey, a special blinking courtship code by which members of the victim's species tell one another they are ready to mate. Somehow the fortuitous female has cracked the fortinous courtship code. By mimicking the flashing mating signals of her prey, the murderess is able to feast on the bodies of males whose triggered courtship tapes cause them to fly mechanically into death's, not love's, embrace. Insects seem to be the most severe exploiters of the automaticity of their prey. It is not uncommon to find their victims duped to death, but less uncompromising forms of exploitation occurs as well. There is, for instance, a little fish, the saber-toothed blenny, that takes advantage of an unusual program of cooperation worked out by members of 2 other species of fish. The cooperating fish form a mutt and Jeff team consisting of a larger group fish on the one hand and a much smaller type of fish on the other. The smaller fish serves as a cleaner to the larger one, which allows the cleaner to approach it and even enter its mouth to pick off fungus and other parasites that have attached themselves to the big fish's teeth or gills. It's a beautiful arrangement. The big grouper gets cleaned of harmful pests and the cleaner fish gets an easy dinner. The larger fish normally devours any other small fish foolish enough to come close to it. But when the cleaner approaches, the big fish suddenly stops all movements and floats open-mouthed and nearly immobile in response to an undulating dance that the cleaner performs. This dance appears to be the trigger feature of the cleaner that activates the dramatic passivity of the big fish. It also provides the saber-toothed blenny with an angle, a chance to take advantage of the cleaning ritual of the cooperators. The blenny will approach the large predator, copying the undulation of the cleaner's dance and automatically producing the tranquil, unmoving posture of the big fish. Then, true to its name, it will quickly rip a mouthful from the larger fish's flesh and dart away before its startled victim can recover. There is a strong but sad parallel in the human jungle. We too have exploiters who mimic trigger features of our own brand of automatic responding. Unlike the mostly instinctive response sequences of non-humans, our automatic tapes usually develop from psychological principles or stereotypes we have learned to accept. Although they vary in their force, some of these principles possess a tremendous ability to direct human action. We have been subjected to them from such an early point in our lives, and they have moved us about so pervasively since then that you and I rarely perceive their power. In the eyes of others, though, each such principle is detectable and ready weapon, a weapon of automatic influence. There's a group of people who knew very well where the weapons of automatic influence lie and who employ them regularly and expertly to get what they want. They go from social encounter to social encounter requesting others to comply with their wishes. Their frequency of success is dazzling. The secret of their effectiveness lies in the way they structure their requests, the way they arm themselves with one or another of the weapons of influence that exist within the social environment. To do this may take no more than one correctly chosen word that engages a strong psychological principle and sets an automatic behavior tape rolling within us, and trust the human exploiters to learn quickly exactly how to profit from our tendency to respond mechanically according to these principles.